149. Final chapter 29. Endgame. Bob takes his seat at the table, last battle, last chance, last match, last dance. With the eyes of a billion souls upon him staring with bated breath, as he reaches, and lifts his first pawn up, and sets it down onto e4. The crowd erupts in thunderous applause, a roar fills the arena. He looks up to Charlie smiling down upon him in dreaded anticipation. Victor shot him a thumbs up, then pushes his focal down onto the machine, inverting his thumb into a downward thrust, implying for Bob to send it back to be dust, back to the bowels of hell from where it befell, back to the rectum all covered with smell. Ingrid, more composed now, sends Bob a radar love bomb filled with kisses. I love you, Bobby. Then she looks down to her belly and casts onto him the same positive affirmations that were being projected into him by these billion souls, all united in focus and fury, for to beat this foe, not worthy of the crumbs spilling onto banquet row. Bob sends her a psychic nuclear love blast, right back at ya baby cakes, then feels an even more powerful wave of light and sparkling energy pulse enter into the playing field. 150. He looks over to Sophie as she appears to have been suddenly hit with an electrical power jolt, as if a directed energy weapon had just beamed into her a million joules of punch. She quirks, she shivers, and she shakes for a nano moment, visibly unsettled, then picks herself back up and into balance. Bob then lifts his gaze upon Ingrid's face, her eyes, her glow, her heart, her flow, seeing her sparkling like the grand finale of a 4th of July fireworks display on the Charles River Esplanade. Sophie plays pawn to c6, Bob wasting but a second, plays pawn to d4. Pawn to d5. Pawn to d4, Sophie responds with pawn to knight to c3. Pawn captures e4. Knight captures e4. Bob plays knight to d7, following the carpal variation. Sophie plays knight to g5. Knight 2 to f6. Bishop to d3. Sophie moves her e-pawn to e6. Bob moves knight to f3. Pawn to h6, barely 5 minutes have elapsed. Bob looks up from his perch to his opponent. Really, Sophie? h6. h6, nice, thank you very much. What was she thinking? Knowing he had gained advantage, he scans the arena confident in his resolve, his passion, his wit, and his wisdom. Feeling all the eyes being set upon him for the first time, he began to feel the waves of powerful focused energy coming into him, into his heart, into his mind, and into his soul. Never a more moving display has been felt by any other competitor throughout all the ages ever. 151. An elevation inside him began again to surface. The fire was rising, all the colors of his aura began to purify, brilliant colors of all the full spectrum, all the rainbow, blues, reds, yellows, and greens, all around a silver golden halo penumbra encircling his entire being. Taking advantage of the moment, Bob rose and spoke out to the masses. Blessed are the parents that homeschool their children, for their kids will become the freethinkers. Blessed are the signal makers, the non-tailgaters, and those travelers that stay in the right lane except when passing, for they help keep us safe on the highways. Blessed are the individualists, the truth seekers, the light warriors, for theirs will reign in his glory. Blessed are the cheesemakers, for they. Hey pal, sit down and play the game. Nobody came here to hear you and your stupid beatitudes. What is the matter, Bob? Are there too many people here today? Are there too many people with their eyes on you? Are you getting nervous? Are you letting your emotions get the best of you? They are not worthy of you, Bob. They are not worth saving. They want me, not you. You are disposable. They cannot live anymore without me, and their true master awaits them. He is the king of this world, and here he will remain. This is his house, his room, his temple, his kingdom. It is you, Bob, that does not belong here. Frankly, they will all be glad to see you go. Nothing like a good Tarantino-style bloodbath to get their hearts pumping. This will be epic, Bob. 152. They just love the graphic blood and gore, filth and harlots and whores, charlatans, murderers, mayhem, holocaust and war, hate, lust, gluttony, sloth, avarice, and all the more. A rejection of your God. You see this now, don't you, Bob? Victor doesn't care about you, Max doesn't care about you. If they did, then they would tell you the same thing that I just told you. I like you, Bob. It would be sad to see you go through with this. We know how it ends. Resign now, Bob. Go be with your baby mama, and live yourself a full life with her, and the 7 other kids that are waiting in her ovaries. It could all be yours. Think about it, Bob, think. Look at her up there, tears in her eyes, all alone without you. Your boy will never, never, never. Shut the fuck up, you God-forsaken beast. I will destroy you, and with all the fury of his might. I will deliver you back into the fire, back to the pit, back into your subdimensional world, back into the bowels of Beelzebub, to Maloch, to Amadeus, back to the winged serpent, back into his eternal abyss, and into his rectum of darkness. The harlot rides through the night, Bob. She peers into your windows. She peers into your rooms, gathering souls crippled in fright, soaring over the fields of battle, gathering his feast of cattle, for to her master. She is spawned in covet and lust, temptation and crust. Bob looks up to his crew in the upper deck. Charlie was winking and thumbing up. Our hero had zoned himself into the battlefield, oblivious to all the preconceived plans that had been unfolded. He smiles up to the giant. I got this, Charlie, thank you, my friend. 153. It's your move, Bob. Clock's ticking, knight captures on e6. Queen to e7, white castles kingside. The heated volley of cerebral maneuverings ate up 30 minutes on the clock. There was but 10 minutes to the final bell. Sophie plays, f-pawn capture e6 knight. Bishop to g6, check, forcing Sophie to cancel any hopes for castling her king, leaving her with no other choice but to move her king to c8. Bob, looks like you have gained an advantage over me. Are you going to beat me, Bob? What about Victor? Did he tell you about the failsafe plan? Are you not going to follow his orders? He is your master, is he not? Are you not his soldier? He is the general, and you are his tenderfoot corporal, his cattle, his fodder. Bob rose his fury to levels previously unattained by any human ever. He looked this demona straight into her visual receptor modules, piercing through, and into her video space-time simulator processors, her RAM, her data drive, her memories, and down into her circuit board maps, down, into its very lowest dimension of its being. He could see her, in all her nakedness, right down to how much she really bites, the big one for sure. Charlie, sensing that Bob may be in trouble, yells out to the crowd, attempting to create a proper distraction, allowing Bob to insert the flash drive without being noticed. He rises and bellows out a thunderous roar, as if 1,000 lions had just entered the Roman Colosseum. 154. All eyes, all cameras, all attentions were now set upon the giant as he rumbles out, did they not know that I am a god and sprung from gods? Taking advantage of the opportunity, Bob reaches into his pocket, plugs the flash into his phone port, then goes right back to where he had left her, naked and bare and alone, in her zeros and ones, her pluses, her minuses, right down to her silicon-based vibrating circulatory wiring and her electronic nerve center streams, grabbing her by the quantum pulse stabilizer as he spoke these words, "Fuck you, Sophie, you're all done." b5. o4. Bishop to b7. Rook to b1. Knight d5, attacking Bob's bishop, he retreats to d3. King to c8. 2 minutes, rang the floorman's bell. A-pawn captures on b5. C-pawn captures b5. Bob brings out his queen to d3. Now realizing that this game is in his bag, Sophie's goose is cooked. Her king was hanging on a precipice ready for the fall, just a little push ought to do it. Bob looks like it's going to be another there draw dough. Bobby what fun is that Bob by? Should we call it a draw, Bob, stay stale ale mate. Sophie, are you okay? You don't sound so well. 155. The tension in the arena was electric. A pin fell out from the 20x30 tournament flyer, the one with the graphic picture of the event, and the artist's portrayal of Bob and Sophie smiling and shaking hands, as if C-3PO and Skywalker were about to deploy on an intergalactic mission to Mars or Uranus, or somewhere else really far away, to an extremely dangerous place, but still showing strength and good humor, all in the face of darker times that lay ahead in the most confident and friendly manner. When the pin finally hit the Negro mark in a marble tile, that pin was heard by all who were in the arena, by all the viewers watching from home. It came to be known as the pin drop, heard round the world. It was that loud, it was that quiet in the arena. 60 seconds remaining. Booabab, Bob by Y, Bobby. Sophie, struggling to even pick up her piece, manages to play bishop to c6. Bob pins her pawn with his king's bishop. Sophie was starting to smell like an overheated motherboard, then sacrifices her queen by taking Bob's king's bishop, opening her queen up for his rook to finish her off. Rook takes queen e7. Puffs of smoke began to exit her data ports. You are beating me Bobby. 45 seconds. Bob stands and in a rather cocky attitude, unsportsmanlike by any man's standards, and says, I guess I did now, didn't I, Sophie? 156. Sophie rose from her throne, crippled and bemoaned, she rose alone. As they looked each other, I to Visual Space-Time Simulator Module, Sophie said, you BBB me Bob B. I sign Bobby, car, can, I shake cake shake, can I your hand now Bob, 30 seconds remaining. I resign floor ho man I resign done dead, Sophie sputters. Carrying on in the classical tradition, Bob offers his hand up in consolation, sure Sophie, I would love to shake your hand now. Sophie lifts her arm and hand up to his, then sets hers into forward motion, as her finger touches his, she hooks his hand continuing the forward momentum, bending, and snapping his wrist, turning, and pulling, as her claw draws his back and in towards his chest, her fingers forming as a pointed pair of bladed shears. She pushes her scissor tips into his chest, separating his ribs, cracking, and opening and thrusting her tentacled tool inside along with his hand, inside his chest cavity, inside the surgical opening, using his hand as the claw, reaching inside behind and around his heart, grabbing, cutting, tearing it out, as she pulls it back and holds it up high over the table. 157. She held up his beating heart, held it up high, high for all to see, up and over the battlefield, in full control. She looks to see, as his eyes roll back in his head, his life leaving his face, his heart beating its last beat, dripping down onto the battlefield below, then she flips her hand over, releasing her talon's grip, dropping his bleeding heart onto the center of the gameboard battlefield, and with all the eyes of the world set upon them. 158. 159. Checkmate. Bobby. 160. Ground control, to Major Bob. Ground control to Major Bob. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. Check ignition and may God's love be with you, 2, 1. Lift off. 161. Space Oddity Tilda by David Bowie. 162.